Hi folks, today we're going to draw this map on Procreate. It's going to be in the black and white kind of old school style. There'll be a link to the finished map in the description below. There's also a link to the brushes for this map on my shop on my website, and you can get them for free with the code YouTube. Just put that in, it will discount them to $0. But if you feel like paying for them, I'd really appreciate it. It's just £2, which is probably about $2.50. You can also get a template file in the description down below, and it's set up for Procreate with all the textures, all the layers you need, all set to the right blending modes, all ready to roll. Anyway, I'm not going to do a big long introduction. If you enjoy the video, please do give it a like. It goes a really long way to getting my videos shared out there with the YouTube algorithm. Alright, let's get on with it. First of all, we'll set up the canvas at 4000 by 3000 pixels at 300 ppi. We'll activate the drawing guide with a grid size of 50 pixels and a low opacity. We want this to help us stay level as we draw and avoid drawing some things too large as we zoom in and out. To do our sketch, we'll use the 6B pencil. It's a standard Procreate brush, but I've included it in the brush pack for simplicity in switching between them. Set the brush at around 15% and we'll begin by marking out the three main regions or kingdoms. They're going to be Aglovia, Acnea and Halitosa. Around these, I'll add some smaller circles. This technique's useful for imagining tectonic plates and how the land would form. Where the circles meet, there'll be hills and mountains. Between the main kingdoms is an ocean. We'll also have a series of islands. As we're using Procreate, I'm not going to sketch my mountains first. We can just draw them in, as the style we'll use is very simple. Mountains will be about 6 to 8 squares wide, and hills will be about 2 to 4 squares wide. We'll keep to that theory all the way through. I'm going to start with a simple volcano, which is just like a mountain without a peak, and a little bit of black behind. Next we'll draw in all the mountain shapes. I like mine to have some variation, so we'll use the edges of the circles on the sketch as a guide for where each one will go, and then we'll add some hills around them. Here's our map with all the mountains. I didn't want to bore you to tears watching hours of this. Next we'll shade in all the mountains. We'll set the brush at 8%. I like to use the non-streamline one for this, and then always we'll shade on the right hand side, as it's always sunset in my maps. For coastlines, we'll make a new layer called coastlines. We'll take the Inkify brush at 18% and draw the coastlines around the circles that we sketched, taking care to add some variation. There's a large flat area between big circles here. This will have a river leading through, forming the border between kingdoms. I like to also add in lots of small islands to flesh out as your campaign develops. We can add some rivers at some of the sharp indents. These should lead up to your mountains. So next let's change our brush size to 10% and we'll accent the coastlines. This is an important step in making your landmasses look like more than random shapes. Make sure you do it on the rivers too. Anyway, set the Inkify brush to 15% and we'll start at the bottom of our forest shapes. We'll draw the trees along the bottom row, trying to add a bit of variety in where they start and how big they are. Each tree is going to be about 1 square high. If you want more info on trees, you can check out the linked video. This is technique 3. So we'll draw all the trees along the bottom edge of the woods, but as we get to the upper edges, we'll just draw in the peaks. This saves loads of time and is quite a nice effect. Now just draw in a load of extra tips, linking some up with the edges. A bit of variety is really good here. Now with a non-streamline brush, we'll add a little shadow to every single tree. You can watch the rest of the time lapse, and then we'll also add a load of singular trees at various locations. And don't forget the shadow on each one. Now we'll add some castles and other details. You can see a 2-minute video on drawing castles if you want, it's linked now. We'll sketch out a quick castle for our first city. This one's going to have 2 towers linked by a wall. Now with our Inkify brush set at 10%, we'll ink them in carefully. You can choose the accent you give the windows. I like my castles to have faces, it makes the map look pretty cool. You can ground them in the map with some little lines and add a tower to each one. Add some thinner lines for shading, and I like to add a little wavy flag too. In the sketch layer, let's name it Tartarton. For the portal, we'll just draw in some mountains following the sketch at about 15% on the brush. then change it to 10% and we'll shade it gently. We can centre the sketch of the circle using the selection tool, then with the brush at about 5%, just draw in the little rough circle details for the portal itself. Now let's add more castles and shade them on the right. The second one's going to be called Zip Bridge as it's in Acnea. Moving on to our mimic sketch, we'll move this into the mountains and then with the brush at 15% again draw the outline. Then reduce the brush to 10% and draw in the mouth, reducing it again for doing in the teeth and gums. And then we'll add a little shading and accenting. I'll add a few more castles and houses before we do the mushwood. I messed up a bit here and put the houses where the mushwood should be, but we can just move them with the selection tool. Drawing a mushwood's really easy. Just start with a curve, add another on top, overlap a few of them and draw some stalks, and then just add a few details and some shading. So for the place names, text in Procreate isn't brilliant, but it's good enough to do the job. So we'll go to the Add Text option under the toolbar, then write in your place name. I'm going to use capitals, then click anywhere outside the keyboard, and then click on the text, choosing the option with 2 A's. In there you can change the font. This one's called Aunt Mildred, and we'll change it to 40 pixels and hit done. With the move tool, we'll then place the text where we want it. Now just duplicate the layer and use the move tool to move that layer to where you want it, and then click on the text to change the writing. Next we'll do the smaller place names in the same way. These are going to be in lowercase and eventually I'm going to settle on 16-point font. If you know what a bobfock is, write it in the comments. We'll also add the islands, the ocean names in slightly smaller capitals. We can add further villages with little circles, so you can develop your map as your campaign develops. And finally we'll add in an uncharted area to the north. Now we'll add a little pop to our oceans. On the coastlines layer, use the automatic selection tool to select the water. Then add a layer below and fill it with grey, setting the blend mode to multiply. Next we'll add a bit of grass on the details layer. With a nice thin brush at about 5%, just add some little tufts. This helps to fill in the blank spaces. Now back on the coastlines layer, we'll draw in some little waves just to give the sea a bit more realism. A final option is to add a bit more detail to the grey sea. So we'll add a layer above the grey layer we made and we'll set it to multiply. Then we'll set it as a clipping mask. This is going to limit our painting to the grey area only. Using a grungy brush or the waves brush in the brush pack, just add some light shading. Then we'll add some dotted lines in for roads, and I like to make a final touch of just duplicating the texture layer. There we go, I really like that style. I think it's great to use that drawing grid to keep everything at the right size in Procreate, because it can be really difficult to do that when you're moving the screen around, kind of zooming, pinching, all that kind of thing. I do also have a Patreon page where you could consider signing up and you'll get access to the finished Procreate file with all the individual layers. And don't forget to use the code YouTube at checkout to get the brushes completely free. Anyway, I'll see you next time. Cheers!